Love is a wonderful feeling. When you start dating someone, you often mentally gauge whether you could spend your entire life with them. If the answer is no, it's best not to prolong the relationship, as you never know what's going on in the other person's mind. Valerie Reyes met a young man and then entered into a relationship that cost her life. The most unusual aspect of this entire case is that the girl predicted her own demise. Valerie Reyes was born on April 1, 1994, in New Rochelle, New York, to Sal and Norma. She had an older brother and 2 younger siblings. As the only daughter, Valerie shared a close bond with her mother, who nurtured her passionate love for all things related to art. Her creative personality shone through in everything she did. Valerie was a gentle, compassionate, and selfless girl who truly worked hard for what she wanted to achieve in life. From childhood, she was very homely, loved to read extensively, and preferred spending her free time not at parties, but with close friends and family. After graduating from high school in 2012, Valerie enrolled at New Rochelle College, where she made many new friends. Acquaintances described her as a happy, loving, and genuinely kind person. The Reyes family was very tight-knit, with one day a week, Sunday, considered their family day. Valerie always eagerly anticipated the weekends. They would all gather together and have fun playing board games, going for walks in the park, or visiting a family-friendly cafe. Valerie continued to goof around and have fun with her younger brothers, even though she herself had long since outgrown childhood. Around them, she transformed into a laughing, carefree, and mischievous girl. The rest of the time, she worked at a bookstore located in a shopping mall in East Chester. She enjoyed this job because of the opportunity to read and recommend books to customers. She could share a great deal about literature of various genres and styles. Even when visiting a cafe, Valerie was always reading. She loved singing in her apartment, taking long walks, going on hiking trips. But her true passion was art and creative self-expression. Valerie drew portraits of her friends and classmates and aspired to become a tattoo artist like her older brother, adorning clients' bodies with her own unique designs. Her dream was to open her own tattoo parlor, and she tirelessly worked towards achieving this distant goal. Previously, Valerie simply allowed her brother to practice tattooing on her, but then she unexpectedly fell in love with this art form herself. She had the soul of an artist. Overall, Valerie was a positive person, although she periodically struggled with bouts of anxiety and depression. Creativity and self-expression helped her overcome these states. Around January 2018, Valerie met a man named Javier on a website. The young couple dated for only about 3 months before breaking up in April 2018. Javier was more interested in the relationship than Valerie herself, which she told her friends. The girl saw no future in this short-term romance. Tension grew between them, and the student chose not to torment herself or the guy, suggesting they part ways. The enamored Javier was unwilling to accept reality and continued to call and write to her, devising various reasons to do so. In September 2018, a few months after the breakup, he messaged Valerie, saying he wanted to reimburse some money allegedly taken from her card. Apparently, Javier had somehow accidentally used her debit card information for an online purchase, and now wanted to refund the amount he had spent. How this happened is unknown. Whether Valerie gave him this card herself, or the data remained on the computer from when they were dating. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. The girl was already tired of Javier constantly seeking reasons to communicate, so she planned to ask her friend to deal with the money issue to avoid giving her ex-boyfriend any unnecessary opportunities. After this incident, the guy seemed to finally understand that everything was over between them and calmed down for a while. For several months, there was no word from him. By that time, Valerie had turned 24. She lived alone in a rented basement apartment in New Rochelle. Given her previous psychological states, living in solitude did not boost her self-confidence. Panic attacks and anxiety began to return more frequently. The girl had been living alone for quite some time, but in recent weeks, she had started to worry more and feel paranoid due to the absence of loved ones nearby. The day before, on Sunday, Valerie spent the entire day with her family. Everything was going wonderfully, and there were no reasons for concern. At least, that's how it seemed from the outside. But on Monday, January 28, 2019, Valerie called her mother in a panic, claiming that she felt like she was going to die soon, that her life would be taken. It's impossible to imagine what Norma felt when she heard such words from her daughter. Valerie sounded so frightened, as if there were some real omens of what she was talking about. Such a sudden change in her mood and thoughts was not accidental. Norma knew that just 5 days ago, her daughter had broken up with yet another boyfriend and was clearly upset by everything happening in her life. The woman did her best to calm her daughter, inviting her to come to the family home if she felt so lonely. However, Valerie, without properly explaining anything, hastened to end the conversation. Norma decided that the best thing to do at the moment was simply to let her daughter rest. In any case, they planned to meet the next day and go shopping together, so she wished Valerie all the best, said a few encouraging words, and, amid the daily hustle and bustle, put the conversation out of her mind. Later that same evening, Valerie sent her mother a message, wishing her a good night and reassuring her that she was feeling better. In addition to Norma, she was texting with her best friend, Jeffrey Anderson. They had been friends for almost 10 years, and Valerie also told him about her worries. After talking it out, the girl indeed felt a certain boost in energy and mood, and since she needed to get up for work in the morning, she went to bed. On Tuesday, January 29th, Norma planned to meet with her daughter in the afternoon, but she did not respond to calls or messages. The woman did not endlessly call, assuming that as soon as Valerie came to her senses, she would dial her mother's number herself and explain everything. The woman was not too worried, thinking that her daughter must have fallen asleep because she had been nervous the day before and now simply turned off her phone so as not to be disturbed. Norma did not know that her daughter had not shown up for work that day. No call came from her on Tuesday or Wednesday. The girl did not respond to friends or relatives and missed another shift at the bookstore. Skipping workdays without any explanation was not at all in Valerie's character, so the department management also thoroughly tried to reach the girl. That's when Norma remembered how on Monday night, her daughter was experiencing some strange anxiety about her own life. The mother began to suspect that something odd was happening. All calls were now being forwarded directly to voicemail, and when the woman found out that her daughter had not shown up at the bookstore for 2 days, she became genuinely frightened. After the parents reported Valerie's disappearance to the New Rochelle Police Department, photographs of the girl and a description of her distinguishing features were distributed throughout the area. Such hasty actions were the result of several recent attacks on women in the vicinity where Valerie lived, which ended quite dismally. The first thing the police did was visit Valerie's apartment, where they found no signs of a struggle or break-in, but everywhere there were noticeable random tiny specks of blood on the pillowcases, in the toilet, and on the bathroom floor. This did not arouse any suspicions, as the smallest splatters could have remained after cutting a small frame while brushing teeth, or perhaps the girl had started bleeding. The detectives were alerted by something else. Valerie's phone, iPad, wallet, some of her clothes, and a small pillow were missing from the apartment. The first thing that came to the investigators' minds was that the girl had run away. Perhaps she had gotten involved in something criminal or was hiding from someone. That's how the police reasoned. But the parents categorically disagreed with this assumption. They were 100% sure that Valerie would have notified them of her departure in any case. She would never have just left, making them worry about her. Norma told the police about her daughter's anxious thoughts before her disappearance. The girl believed that someone wanted her dead. Now the woman was berating herself for not properly questioning Valerie about the origin of such thoughts in her head. She thought it might be somehow related to her daughter's personal life and the recent breakup. Therefore, Valerie's ex-boyfriend, whom she had broken up with a few days earlier, was the first to come under suspicion. However, the guy was soon excluded from the list because he actively participated in the search for his girlfriend and had an alibi. Over the next few days, the police, along with the Reyes family and friends of the missing girl, turned to social media users for help. and the response was immediate. One of Valerie's friends reported seeing her near the New Rochelle train station a couple of days ago. The student was wearing a dark green coat, black jeans, and black shoes. Another message claimed that Valerie was spotted in Manhattan. Others said they had encountered a similar-looking girl in one of the city's bars. The police checked each lead and found that none of these statements were true. To understand where the young girl could have actually gone, the police decided to track the activity on her bank account. Soon they discovered that money had been withdrawn from Valerie's debit card at several ATMs in New Rochelle, totaling over $10,000. The police requested surveillance camera footage from the bank at the ATMs, but it would take time to verify the girl's movement pattern that morning. In one of the recordings, detectives found a girl matching Valerie's description. She was caught on a surveillance camera near the bank early in the morning of January 30th. The footage was shown to her mother, Norma, who confirmed that the stranger did indeed resemble her daughter in some way, and a seed of hope sprouted in the mother's heart. Photos of the girl were posted in the media with a request to report any known details about her whereabouts. It was also mentioned that Valerie had recently been suffering from anxiety and depression. Despite numerous public appeals, no new information on the case was received. The police had absolutely no leads in the Valerie Reyes case for a week, and on February 5, 2019, she was found. A group of workers in Greenwich, Connecticut around 8 a.m. were performing routine road work in a wooded area about 10 miles from Valerie's home. One of them noticed a red-orange suitcase several meters from the main road. This suitcase looked suspicious. It was lying in a forested area and did not resemble an old, worn-out item that had been discarded as unnecessary. Moreover, it was clearly not empty. One of the workers' curiosity got the better of reason. He approached the suitcase with the intention of opening it and looking inside. When the man unzipped it, he was immediately turned inside out by the terrible smell seeping out. The other workers immediately dialed the police station. When the investigative team arrived at the scene, they opened the suitcase and found the body of a young woman inside. She was dressed in a shirt and jeans. The shirt was unbuttoned. The victim's shoes were missing. The girl's knees and ankles were bound. Her wrists were also tied with tape, and the victim's mouth and chin were wrapped in several layers of duct tape. Multiple injuries to the face and head indicated that before placing the body in the suitcase, the victim had been severely beaten. The nose and cheekbones were broken, and the skull was fractured. One side of the face was a solid bruise. The body hidden in the suitcase had already begun to decompose. This meant that the girl found had been dead for at least several days. The body was sent to the forensic laboratory, and the next day it was established that the cause of death was strangulation. To confirm the identity of the deceased, Valerie's father and older brother were invited to the morgue. The male half of the family decided to shield Norma from the horrific sight they were about to see. The men had no doubts that it was Valerie lying before them, even though the girl was difficult to recognize due to her injuries. But this was not the full horror that the Reyes family had to endure. It was later discovered that one of the road workers had photographed the body of the beaten and strangled Valerie when investigators opened the suitcase. He began showing the photo to all his acquaintances, recounting the terrible find he and his crew had discovered in the wooded area near the main road. This person clearly did not think that the picture would sooner or later reach those who knew the victim. The worst that could be expected happened. The image of Valerie Reyes nearly made it to the media because this worker called the editorial office of a news magazine and offered to publish the crime scene photo. The Department of Public Works, where this man worked upon learning of the situation, sent him on administrative leave while they investigated the incident. In the end, they had to make a public apology for the thoughtless and insensitive behavior of their employee, although at that point it was the last thing Valerie's family needed. After Valerie was declared missing, the police tracked her banking activity. It was discovered that the first cash withdrawal occurred on January 29th around 5 a.m., just a few hours after Valerie's conversation with her mother. Detectives managed to find footage from a surveillance camera at one of the ATMs, showing a man dressed in black pants and a black hooded sweatshirt, completely covering his face, withdrawing the money. The ATM surveillance camera also captured his vehicle. Using the license plate number, they were able to track down the owner of the car. It turned out that the Honda vehicle had been rented for only 2 days, January 28th and 29, and it was rented by none other than Valerie's ex-boyfriend, Javier, whom she had dated for only 3 months and had broken up with last year. Over the next few days, after the girl's disappearance, he made several more cash withdrawals from Valerie's bank card. So who exactly is Javier? Javier Enrico de Chilo Rojas was born on January 3, 1995. He was originally from Venezuela and held dual citizenship with Portugal. In 2017, he moved to the United States using a special document that allowed residents from a very small list of countries to stay in the U.S. for 90 days without an official visa. At that time, Venezuela was in a state of economic and financial crisis. The crisis led to hyperinflation and a shortage of vital goods in the country, such as food and medicine, and also contributed to rising unemployment. Nearly 8 million Venezuelan refugees flocked to neighboring countries where the government granted them temporary residence. Javier was one of the refugees who decided to radically change his life. When the 90 days of visa-free residence in the U.S. expired, he did not want to return to his homeland, so he remained in the country illegally. Javier lived in Flushing, New York, and frequently changed his fields of activity. First, he worked for a cleaning company, then as a barista, and then as a cook and waiter in a fast food restaurant. All the time spent in the U.S., Javier kept a low profile and tried not to draw attention to himself. Friends considered him a kind, thoughtful guy who was always ready to help. In January 2018, Javier unexpectedly fell in love with a girl from a dating site. It was Valerie Reyes. He did everything to make her notice him. When it happened, Javier was ready to shout about his feelings to the whole world, wrote a lot about Valerie on social media, and from the first meeting, he was prepared never to part with his beloved again. But it turned out that Valerie was not ready for a serious relationship. When Javier suggested that the girl move in together to live as one family, he only pushed her away from him. Valerie understood that her boyfriend wanted much more from this relationship, but she herself was in no hurry to tie her life to a man. She had huge plans for the future, and marriage did not yet fit into them. Valerie quickly grew tired of Javier's constant presence and decided to end the relationship. However, the guy was not going to give up his beloved so easily and continued to call several times a day and send dozens of text messages. Valerie even had to block his access in all messengers and social networks. Norma, Valerie's mother, knew about her daughter's relationship with Javier. The woman got the impression that the guy liked to control everything, and if desired, could easily stoop to manipulation, and that's what happened. Once he used the death of his mother from cancer to make Valerie feel sorry for him and agree to a meeting. The mother's illness was never confirmed. It is possible that he was ready to do anything to get the girl back. Even with such dubious manipulations, Javier did not take no for an answer. Their actual relationship lasted less time than the period he pursued Valerie, using a variety of methods for meetings. The guy made the last attempt in September 2018, when he once again tried to contact Valerie about using her debit card data. The girl directly told him that she did not want to have anything to do with him, and sent her friend to meet him. After this incident, Javier did not appear in Valerie's life, but was it the calm before the storm? Or did he really realize the futility of his attempts to get closer? This was now to be found out by the detectives handling Valerie's case. On February 11, 2019, Javier was arrested at his rented apartment in Flushing, New York. During the interrogation, he gave several reasons why he used Valerie's debit card and withdrew money. At first, he claimed that he found her wallet on a street in Manhattan. Inside were cards and a piece of paper with the PIN code for the debit card. Javier insisted that he had not seen Valerie for about a year and was not even in the area where she lived. When the police provided the guy with evidence that he had rented a car and its location was easy to determine, Javier immediately changed his story. Now he claimed that he was near his ex-girlfriend's house, but did not see her. Admittedly, he was forced to confess by the photographs of Valerie's body in the suitcase shown by the investigator. Apparently, he still had some warm feelings for Valerie, but his story was still far from the truth. Javier said that, in fact, on the evening of January 28th, he was communicating with Valerie. The young man went to her apartment and committed the last act of passion. Although they had not seen each other for several months before that, the meeting was very stormy. They were having such a good time together that they didn't notice how they fell off the bed. Valerie fell to the floor and hit her head so hard that she stopped reacting to anything at all. At first, Javier tried to bring the girl to her senses, but she did not regain consciousness in any way, and he panicked. Then he taped her mouth shut so that Valerie would not start screaming at the most inopportune moment. He tied her hands and feet and stuffed her into a suitcase. After that, he got rid of it by throwing it into a wooded area. The police took Javier's DNA and were able to match it with a DNA sample found on the suitcase handle, as well as with a substance found under the girl's fingernails. However, the ex-boyfriend's story did not match the evidence that detectives had discovered by this time. Firstly, all of Valerie's acquaintances and friends unanimously assured that Valerie did not want to have anything to do with Javier, so she would never have voluntarily made love to him. Secondly, the forensic examination showed that the girl died of suffocation inside the suitcase due to several layers of tape wrapped around her face. If Javier's story had been true and the guy was really scared, then it is unclear why it was necessary to tie up the dead body, as he claimed, and then cold-bloodedly take the bank cards and withdraw all the accumulated funds. The young man explained his behavior by saying that he deliberately made himself visible on the ATM camera recordings so that the police would catch him sooner. After what happened, he could not forgive himself and was waiting for retribution. Here, a legitimate question arose as to why not just go to the police and confess. Given Valerie's mental state and the last conversation with her mother, it is unlikely that the girl would have wanted to make love with Javier when he suddenly appeared in her apartment that night. Why did she have multiple injuries on her face that could not be obtained from a fall? All these facts completely refuted Javier's version, but the detectives could not determine the motive that forced him to deliberately take the life of the girl whose affection he had sought for so long. In the end, the investigators came up with a possible motive for Javier's actions. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video. It's really important. On January 24th, 2019, about a week before Valerie disappeared, the guy sent a text message to his new girlfriend. He complained to her that he caught his ex in his own bed with a neighbor, but this was not true, as Valerie would never have gone to Javier's house on her own. Most likely, the guy found out that Valerie had a new boyfriend. He stalked Valerie, considering her his own property, and the appearance of a rival on the horizon infuriated the young man. As the evidence shows, here's what happened that night. On the evening of January 28, 2019, Javier rented a Honda car in Flushing, New York, where he lived, and headed to his ex's apartment in New Rochelle. He arrived there early in the morning, parked the car near Valerie's house, and put his phone in airplane mode. The police pinged his phone, and cell towers showed that Javier was within 300 feet of Valerie's home that morning, and then the phone signal disappeared. It is unknown whether Valerie let him into the apartment or if he forced his way inside, but soon after, an argument broke out between them. Javier's DNA was found in swabs taken from Valerie's chest and genitals. This DNA, along with the sample extracted from under the victim's fingernails, indicated intimate contact. Sexual intercourse did indeed take place between them, but apparently it was not completed by mutual consent, as Javier claimed. Most likely Valerie resisted as much as she could, and as a result of the struggle, scratched the attacker. The violent argument and resistance led to the girl sustaining a head injury, numerous bruises on her face, and a broken nose. When she lost consciousness from the pain, Javier wrapped her mouth and chin with several layers of tape, tied her legs and hands, and then stuffed her into a red-orange suitcase. They had bought this suitcase for a joint trip when they first started dating. Valerie was still alive when the rejected boyfriend decided to get rid of her. She suffocated from the multiple layers of tape around her mouth and chin. Her nose was broken as a result of the attack, so she simply had nothing to breathe with. After the suitcase was moved to the trunk of the rented car, Javier returned to the girl's apartment and cleaned up as best he could. That's why the police found so little evidence there. Driving away from the house, he unlocked Valerie's phone with her fingerprint and checked all the records. He was interested in who she had been communicating with after breaking up with him, but even more, he needed her bank card information. Valerie, deprived of the remaining oxygen, could no longer resist. Upon reaching Greenwich, Connecticut, Javier threw the suitcase in a secluded section of the highway, hidden from prying eyes by trees. He did this without even knowing whether Valerie was alive or dead. On the way back home, he used the girl's phone to access her banking information and then disposed of it by throwing it off a bridge into a river. Then Javier stopped at several different ATMs to withdraw money. In addition to Valerie's mobile phone from her apartment, he took her iPad and one of the pillows. Later, the young man exchanged the tablet for a new monitor for his computer. So, judging by Javier's actions, after committing the crime, he was not tormented by remorse. On February 12, 2019, Javier Enrico Docilo Rojas was charged with kidnapping resulting in death. For this crime, he faced the death penalty or life imprisonment. It took some time to bring the case to trial. Javier's defense tried to portray him as a victim, hoping that the judge would remove the death penalty from the agenda. The lawyers argued that this was the guy's first crime, committed out of jealousy. Prior to this, he had a reputation as a decent person, with no previous criminal record. His refugee status also played into the hands of the defense team. He had to leave a country that was falling apart, abandon college, and flee Venezuela. Javier arrived in the U.S. with only $600 in his pocket. He experienced depression due to separation from loved ones and got involved with illegal substances. He was a broken man who sincerely regretted his actions and understood the horrifying nature of his behavior. Fortunately for him, the lawyers reached a plea agreement, and on February 5, 2020, Javier Enrique Docilo Rojas pleaded guilty to kidnapping Valerie Reyes and actions that led to the girl's death. In court, he fully repented and said that he would never forgive himself for what he had done, and he did not even dare to beg the Reyes family for forgiveness, knowing that he did not deserve it. When Norma, Valerie's mother, took the floor and expressed in words the pain she felt at losing her daughter in her prime, Javier could not hold back his tears. He quietly sobbed in the defendant's dock. On September 23, 2021, 26-year-old Javier Enrique Docilo Rojas was sentenced to 30 years in prison for kidnapping resulting in death. Due to the fact that he was in the United States illegally, he will be deported back to Venezuela as soon as his sentence expires. Valerie Reyes brought joy and happiness to everyone around her. The tragic death of this girl caused a wave of outrage throughout the community in which she lived her short life. Jealousy, cruelty, greed for money, all the criminal's actions do not seem accidental, committed under the influence of emotions. They were calculated too precisely. Javier knew he was going to harm Valerie even before he entered her apartment. Stealing from a person he had just taken the life of shows that he had no remorse, and all his tears in the defendant's dock were nothing more than another manipulation. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.